That's kind of, everyone was silent. You have 60 seconds to just run and jump and do whatever you'd like, act like elementary school kids if you wanted. No? Mature, good. All right, thank you all very much. Appreciate you being here. We'll officially start the meeting with the Thor hammer. Okay, we're going to excuse Mr. Johnigan is not here. He had a work assignment that he wasn't able to get out of or leave before we start the board meeting, so we'll excuse him tonight. So if you'll join me, the first item on the agenda is a call for a moment of silence, about 30 seconds. If you'll stand up and join me, we'll kind of gather our thoughts. And then we'll have Peyton Silva from Sundance Elementary School will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please join us in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hey, Peyton, can we invite you back again sometime? A little bit? Yes, I want to hear you loud and strong. So thank you for being here tonight, and we officially extend an invitation to come back again and lead us in a Pledge of Allegiance. It is intimidating when all these big people are staring at you. I know. I get that way too every other Thursday night. All right, our most impressive and favorite part of the evening. Mrs. Dunsey, you're bringing us our staff recognitions, item number 4 on the agenda.
Good evening, President Bullock, members of the board, and Dr. Stifler. As you may know, the Arizona State Board of Education and the Superintendent of Public Instruction recently introduced a draft version of the updated English, language arts, and mathematics standards. Over 200 teachers spent 6,000 volunteer hours to complete a comprehensive revision on those standards. We have a number of Peoria Unified teachers and coaches that served on the Arizona Standards Development Committee, and they worked diligently for nearly a year to help develop the latest draft of these standards, which are available for review on the Arizona State Board of Education website for public comment. Members of the Arizona Standards Development Committee and Peoria Unified include, and please stand when I call your name, Jan Ogino, a 5th grade teacher at Heritage Elementary, Aaron Gonzalez, a math coach at Cheyenne Elementary. Renee Estrella Chavez, a reading and literacy teacher at Peoria Elementary. Joyce Griggs, a language arts teacher at Cactus High School. Debbie LeBlanc, a curriculum and instruction coach here at the district office. Kristen Henninger, a curriculum and instruction math coach. And I'd like to recognize 2 others who were unable to join us this evening due to other commitments. We also have Julie Wagner, who is a 7th grade teacher at Lake Pleasant Elementary. And we have Teresa McElhaney, who is a working math group teacher. She is a former 8th grade Peoria Unified math teacher. Updating the English, language arts, and math standards is critical in moving our district forward and ensuring that we provide the best possible education to our students. Tonight, we would like to recognize the members of this committee for providing their time and their knowledge in order to help our students. I would now like to recognize Ms. Jan Ogino to the podium and ask that she share a few additional details about the work that her and her fellow committee members did on those standards, and that they all may stand for any questions or comments from the governing board.
Thank you for being here.
You're welcome. Do I open the, or they all have it? So do you have any questions about the draft standards?
Oh, you know what? I'll tell you what, this is my favorite thing to do to teachers, because they know a lot more than I do. Help us understand it. Because you know what, I looked at what even the ASBA and other organizations, sent to the kind of drafts and reviews, and half of it was like, okay, it makes sense, half of it is, that's teacher speak.
Right.
So bottom
So
line
the-
it for me, so we can make
So
it,
the mandate was not an overhaul. It was to start with the 2010 standards as a base for our work. So the scope, though, of the work depended on the type of comments that were put in by the public, teachers, administrators, parents. And so the scope of our work was highly dependent on what the public said about certain various strands or particular standards. We could only really act on something that was very specific. So a few of the things that were as specific as I can make it is cursive was a really big area of comment. We had a lot of comments on cursive, on both sides, introducing it, not introducing it into the standards. Then we had a lot of comments on money, introducing it and also not introducing it into the standards. We had some comments based on the scope of that there were too many standards or too little standards. So it ran the gamut between one extreme to the other extreme. Not all the comments were negative, as one might think. There were quite a few positive comments, but the only comments we could actually take action on were those that had some specifics to it. So there were comments that maybe have said, I would really like to see money put back in. They gave their reasons for why. That was a big one for discussion because we had a lot of comments for and a lot of comments against. There are some issues with money because it's not just a numerical concept, it's also a social construct. So, and being a social construct with the penny being larger than a dime for very, very young children who think very concretely, we had to think long and hard about introducing that. So there were also other things that we had to include that we had to work on. A glossary, the fluency progressions, the controversy of the 70-30 split, informational text versus literature. Let's see, so we did add a completely new strand in the younger grades called writing foundations. So whatever was in the old standards that had to do with actually manuscript, we put in there, plus we added cursive. So that would be something probably no other state has right now, is a writing foundation standard or strand. Let's see. So the work took over a year. We did have some comments from the public about why the process was not transparent. And one of the main reasons is time. Right now, other documents have to be written to go along with these standards, so implementation date is until 1819. If we had had periodic comment periods for purely transparency reasons, we could delay that another year. And most states that have done this work, there's probably 7 states already that have done a review almost nearly identical to this. The time period of review was 12 to 15 months, and I think the percentage of standards that were actually changed or revised in some way was about 20 to 30%. But we did look at every single standard. There was not one standard we didn't go over with a fine-tooth comb. You have any questions?
We always have questions.
Okay,
Well, from the experts, that's why let's hope that you'll help us learn and your
sure.
other teachers will help us learn. Let's start with my right, Ms. Pangarelli, questions, comments?
Well, first of all, I just wanted to thank you, Ms. Ogino, and everybody else that had came tonight. How many teachers total, or people total? 200?
Wow.
That is a
And we
lot.
were accordioned in and out, so we weren't all there at the same time.
Okay.
And math was done separate from English language arts. So within the same week, we had one day for only math teachers and administrators and coaches, and one day for English language arts teachers, administrators, and coaches.
Wow. And with the different backgrounds in teachers, I guess, what insights did you learn from such a wide group of individuals from different school districts?
Well, a lot of the insights had to do with socioeconomic groupings, English language English language learning groupings, special ed groupings, and our Native American population. So we had to take all of those into consideration when deciding to either change the rigor or not change the rigor. But there were 3 areas in which we really focused on. One was clarity. We had to make sure that every standard was clear, not only to teachers, but to parents and to students. And did it maintain a high cognitive demand based on the development of the child? And third, was it measurable? And there were some standards in which the measurability was kind of vague. So we made sure that those standards could actually be measured.
And my second question was future challenges, but I think you answered a couple of them.
Yeah, we actually are going back next week to review the comments that we already have. And that comment time could be extended depending on whether we don't have enough comments. Because once school started and the standard review process was kind of at the same time school started, it was not really at the forefront of people's minds to go and make comments about the standards. But if you want to see we don't have a crosswalk for the public, but the technical reviewers have a crosswalk. And if you look on the azk12.gov, standards.gov site, there is a comparison where they have a comparison between 2010 and 2016. The English language arts ones are redline, or they're not necessarily redline, but the changes that they made were all in red. And in math, you'd have to look more closely. There weren't red lines in those, but there were very specific changes where they would actually take a standard. If they made any changes to that standard, it would be in the next box, and then there would be a justification for that standard. But every standard that we did not change, because every standard wasn't commented on, we did research on to make sure that we should keep it. And we even changed some of those, even though we didn't have a comment on it. Anybody?
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Mrs. Doan, questions, comments?
I just wanted to say that's a lot of man hours, and very appreciative of all the hard work that went into this and the knowledge, the wisdom that you guys brought to the table. Thank you very much, and I'm sure our students are going to reap the benefits.
Well, we had Debbie LeBlanc and Julie Wagner who were in subcommittee heads. So we had a lot more leadership in the standards review process than many of the other districts did. And then we had a lot more workers too. So we really, we were represented very well.
Thank you.
Mrs. Connect.
Yeah, I echo the gratitude for the representation and the expertise that you all bring to the table. I had 2 questions. One, Ms. Ogino, is given the fact that you said it won't be fully implemented till 19, you said?
1819.
19. And the fact that there are still input coming in.
Yes.
How flexible or how open to further evolution is this new set of standards?
Well, we could do a third rewrite too, or revision. So we are going to do this next revision based on the comments up to October 3rd, and then we send it back to the ASDC, which I'm on too, and we decide whether we will accept it, that draft, and it goes up to the State Board of Ed for final, or to send it back to a review. So that next review could happen, which could delay the implementation date another year, but we hope not. I mean, because there has to be a lot of other pieces that go along with this. You know, teachers need a crosswalk. Teachers also need some professional development type documents to help them, you know, understand the changes and how to tweak some of their lessons and some of their units to make those changes make sense.
So in your opinion and the opinion of your colleagues, when the revised standards are implemented, is it going to be a big change or no?
No, it's not good. I mean, like I said, the other states did the very same things, and it's roughly between 20 and 30% changes, and those changes are major in some areas, like actually adding new standards, and minor in some areas where there are just wordsmiths, just tweaks to further clarify what the students need to know and be able to do.
Okay.
Does anybody have anything to add with that?
Okay, and then my last question, for those people who may be watching in the public, I know this, and you know I've spoken about this. Could you please help everybody understand the difference between standards and curriculum?
Okay, good question. It often gets confused. Standards are what students need to know and be able to do within a given year. So they're kind of like guideposts, so like a map, and all the stops along the map to get to your destination. Okay. Curriculum is the details in between. How do I get from one point of the map to another point of the map? And so it's more of a detailed map, so to speak, or where all the stops along the way between the two. So
And the tools that are used to get there?
well, the tools are the resources, and then the instructional strategies are what teachers do, their teaching strategies, to help the students meet what they're supposed to be able to do and know. So,
Thank you.
does that make sense?
Yep, very good, thank you.
Questions, but I'll give you
Sure?
a break.
Okay.
And you can choose some of your other equally adept colleagues to answer these questions. Okay, good. But before you go, thank you for making, I know Ms. Eugenio contacted myself and some other board members to say, hey, you know, let's recognize what we did. Because everyone gets so busy what they're doing, sometimes we forget how. We always talk about how great PUSD is, and oftentimes we forget how deep PUSD's experience and professionalism gets pulled out to other areas, like Mr. Hicks, for example, brought into, trying to redefine school finance, chosen as one of the top CFOs in our state, and we have some of the top teachers and administrators in our state, teachers in this case, helping to formulate going forward. So it's thank you for bringing this to our attention so we could recognize it and learn from it as well. But I'll let you choose somebody else, and I'll hit them with a couple of questions, because everyone who stands in the back go, oh, I'll just support. There's no way they're going to call on me. Just like sitting in the back of the rows, right? I hit people up. I'll move to the front next time, but
Well, let me clarify the difference between standards and curriculum even further. Because standards are what? You know, these are outline what the students need to be able to do. And really curriculum is how we get there. Okay. How do we get there? And the how includes resources. The how includes like a curriculum map that a district might make. The how also includes instructional strategies. So, and we had to, that was a clear line we had to define. And my committee being mostly lay people, it took 3 sessions for them to really understand this. Because it's
They're
teacher
very
speak.
closely related.
Yes, and their teacher speak too, so.
yeah. You get to choose somebody. Debbie.
I worked on the 9th grade working group for ELA. It was probably a good 2 or 3 of my meetings involved going through 3,000 public comments and
Wow.
categorizing them in terms of, did they address a standard? As Jan was saying, were they specific enough even to act upon? Or were they addressing other situations or other conditions like curriculum? That would be a curriculum local district choice, and that's what their comment was about, and it was beyond the scope of our work.
That's
or our
another
committee.
important distinction, is that
Yes.
standards are state and curriculum is local.
Right, right.
Very good.
And so that was a huge decision-making process in and of itself, sorting through all the public comments, educators as well as, general public who identified themselves that way. So once that was done, and that part's very transparent and part of the public record. I don't know how you get it exactly, but I know we had to sign off on it on every day. We had to make sure there's a written copy and a typed copy of all of our analysis and rationale for, is it actionable? Does it have to do, we categorize all those comments and then decided if something could be done about it or addressed. And that's public record somewhere as well. So all those, to make sure that part was very transparent and anybody can, as far as I know, get to that. That's why we had to do it. And then, so once all of that process was done, it was the nitty-gritty work of looking to see, what could be clarified, as Jan said. Clarity was number one. Do they build from one grade level to the other, articulation from one grade to the next, and that there was a clear vertical progression of difficulty and enhancement of the student skills going up? Did we skip something too soon? Did we go to a topic too soon? That sort of thing. I was really impressed that we had several. This was really telling, because the high school group kind of worked in its own room. But the 11-12 table that addressed the 11-12 ELA standards always had a college professor there who taught English 101, always had his perspective because he was working with the standards that affected juniors and seniors in high school. And the interesting conversations to overhear and everything, so it was neat. So there was always that college instructor perspective as well. And on our other ELA leadership team, we also had a teacher, an English professor of teachers of English. So this would be someone who would be helping someone in student teaching with English and so on. I think we need to work more on lesson planning with our student teachers on directly related to the standards. He was realizing that there might be a mismatch a little bit between what they're doing with their student teachers and so on. So just lots of interesting professional growth among us,
Yes.
as well as understanding how public perceptions and understanding of what you did or did not understand. So.
I'm going to have Erin Gonzalez answer a few questions, because she did third grade math, right? Third grade math is a really crucial year. Third grade gets slammed in both ELA and math, so she can answer a few questions about.
Let me ask two questions, kind of 50,000-foot view questions. And I'm going to ask it because I get this question asked by a lot of parents or people, friends who aren't teachers, who don't live this, like, they're just like I am. I'm in a different world by day, try and learn as much by night. So let me ask two questions, again, 50,000 foot. This particular rewrite, we'll call it that for argument's sake, really is because, I guess it's a yes or no question, our state has voted to eliminate college and career readiness, and that this will, in essence, become the replacement, for lack of a better term. So is that an accurate statement?
I think it's accurate in that we as Arizona educators are owning it, and that it's, I know part of the initiative was that they really wanted it to come from Arizona educators. And so being involved in that, I can say definitely that everybody that was involved, their voice was heard. Me particularly in the accordion model, I was folded in a little bit later in the process after the public comments had already been sort of sorted out and looked through. And I came on more in the kind of meat of it, where we really looked at the content in the grade levels. And it was, I will tell you, hands down, some of the best professional development I've ever had. Not only do you really roll your sleeves up and you get to know the standards really, really well and deeply, but the relationships you build with other people on the committees grew me exponentially. Other contacts in other districts, and really just learning how it's happening across Arizona. This is my 13th year here in Peoria, and working at the state level has really allowed me to see what else is going out there, but it also makes me really proud to be part of Peoria. Because when you hear another district say, oh, well, we're not doing this, or we don't have that, and then you say, well, in Peoria, so it's been really eye-opening. So I guess to say that the rewrite is, I think, what we were looking for, I would agree with that it's Arizona kind of born and bred.
So, and just to elaborate on that a little bit, because again, I've gotten this question a lot, and I've asked this even being on a school board. Again, don't know as much as you, but kind of somewhere in the middle. In 2010, our state legislature voted to accept Common Core, which was then changed at college and career readiness. And it's in the process of being dismantled from partially political. Let's be honest, we're all adults here. So obviously, we have to have some kind of standards.
Right.
Will this, when it's done, let's say it's done in 17, 18, or 18, 19, whatever, we'll be optimistic. Will it be an Arizona only? Because college and career readiness, Common Core was an entire nationwide structure, we'll call it that for argument's sake. Will this be an Arizona? And again, it's just a short answer, because I know I'm opening up a can of worms here. But to understand it, because there's a big disconnection with this exact thing with this public and with teachers and people in the education profession. When this is finished, will it replace will replace the national standards, and will it be Arizona only? Forget the local writing of it, we do that now, but will those standards be owned and just used in Arizona? Or is it something that you're trying to compete to replace a national standard? Or is it kind of, hey, we're on our own here, we're going to do what's best for Arizona? So again, how best to answer that?
I think Jan's jumping up.
I'm not going to lie to you. There are going to be a lot of similarities between the rewrites in Louisiana, Tennessee, South Carolina, North Carolina, New York, New Jersey, wherever. There are going to be some similarities because we all started with the same base. However, not all of the changes we made in Arizona will be the same changes they made in their states. Not all the wordsmith changes that we made in our standards will be the same ones that they'll do in their states.
Okay.
What we did find out in the review is we came into it thinking, are these really good standards to begin with? And after doing the research, because we had stacks of books of research, books, articles, what have you, to go through, they were really based in research to begin with. So did we want to reword it in such a way that we took away some of the research-based understanding of what students need to know and be able to do at the end of every year? And what we didn't want to do was to create gaps. If we made such significant changes at one grade level, did that create a gap in the grade level behind us or the grade level ahead of us? So coherence, coherence was very, very important, because you don't want to unintentionally create a gap just because we felt like one standard in particular might need to be changed, because that standard is really related to another standard in another grade, above and below.
Makes sense. So but this will.
This will
again,
be
so I understand-
ours.
This will be ours. And just the last question, and I don't want to take all night from you guys.
That's okay.
Ladies, I say, guys, generic term, right? When this is done, one of the great things that was trumpeted, and a lot of teachers I've talked to agree with, is a national standards, which the Common Core was in its very basic part. It was a national standard, so I could move my kids to Kentucky, or New York, California, and they would be picking up right where they left off. And that, to me, a logic-oriented computer guy, that makes complete sense. How will this, when it's passed, when it's massaged, probably a better term to use, how will this affect that portability of education between states and not losing or skipping a beat?
I think for the most part, they're still rigorous across all of the states that did the revisions. And if those parents traveled between those states and moved between those states, I think the students would be pretty much right on track.
Okay, well, cool. Well, I hope, will you please come back and maybe another year when we have gotten this, and hopefully it doesn't drag out too long for your sanity and for the state of Arizona, so we at least know where we're going. So thank you very much for being here tonight.
For letting us talk about
And
this.
thank you for the additional information as well, so I can be a little bit smarter than people ask me questions. So thank you very much. Good. Yes. Of course. Good, thank you for doing that. Okay, any additional, we do, awesome. We love staff recognitions, thank you.
Yes. President Bullock, members of the governing board, and Dr. Stifler, Arizona Professional Educators, otherwise known as AZPE, they serve to educate and to promote equity, fairness, democracy, economic opportunity, and high-quality public education. Each year, AZPE issues classroom mini-grants to teachers throughout Arizona for a wide variety of projects. This evening, we have Becky Rayburn, who is president of AZPE, and Leah Esmond, who is director of AZPE, who have joined us to introduce 2016 grant recipients from the Peoria Unified School District. At this time, I would like to ask that Ms. Rayburn and Ms. Esmond come up here because we do have some check presentations that they are going to be issuing this evening.
We'd like,
Thank you, Mrs. Duncy. This evening, we are proud to share that 5 Peoria Unified teachers recently received AZPE mini grants for their classrooms. Grant recipients, when I call your names, please stand so that you may be recognized for the work you are doing in your classroom. Nicole Albrecht, culinary arts teacher from Raymond S. Kellis High School, received $500 to replace unusable equipment to the culinary arts classes. Frances O'Leary, early childhood development teacher from Raymond S. Kellis High School as well, received $500 for helping her students with expenses so that they could attend the Educators Rising State Conference in Tucson. Nancy Guy, an ELL teacher from Sundance Elementary School, received $500 to create a cozy classroom library. Colleen Ferreter, second grade teacher from Sun Valley Elementary School, received $500 for an attendance program that she began at her school. Jeff Fryer, a fourth grade teacher, also from Sun Valley Elementary School, received $750 to purchase 8 stream tables for his science classes. Congratulations to these 5 teachers. Here with us this evening are Mr. Jeff Wooten, principal at Raymond S. Kellis High School, Mrs. Jennifer Silva, principal at Sundance Elementary School, Mr. Dale Schuff, principal at Sun Valley Elementary School. Thank you for coming and celebrating and recognizing your teachers this evening. Funding classroom mini grants is just one way that we at AZPE support our members. We are more than pleased to support the work they are doing and are thrilled to join you this evening to honor these teachers. So all of you, would you like to join me here? And in case there are any questions or any comments that you would like to have from the governing board. Or you can do it from there. I think it's kind of a little awkward to have you come here.
can we do this first, since you all don't move, you're perfectly aligned, you look great, but I'm sorry, Ms. Dunster, you're taking pictures like with me in the background, I tried to duck, you probably got the top of my head, it looks weird. Like, what's that guy doing back there? So let's get out of the way, because you're the highlight. Let's get out of the way, kind of get in the middle, and have the backdrop, and we'll move so we can get some nice pictures to post on our social media. No, it doesn't work.
One, two.
Okay.
I would say who's buying dinner, but that's probably inappropriate because it's for the children. Forget I said that.
And they've already spent the money. It's already been, they've already received it.
Well, actually, let's do this if you don't mind, because we want to get you, even though you were talking about hate being in front of the camera, and I'm glad you said that, because I'm going to make sure the camera shows you and get you the recognition. So go ahead and set your cardboard checks down, if you will, and then head over to the podium, because that's where the camera focuses on, while I have a couple of comments for you. Our goal here in the board is to get everybody on camera.
I'll go first.
Excellent. Well, good.
Actually, you've heard about my grant before. About a month ago, I bought knives and cutting boards with the grant.
I remember that you were here.
I took some pictures, so I'll make sure I'll send them over so you guys can see. I took them cutting today and using the cutting boards today. They're pretty happy. Knives work great.
You know what would have been really cool?
Yeah.
To show how appreciative you are of that money is like to have brought some food. that was made with those knives. Just a suggestion. I'm thinking of my other board members right now. So, but yes, we will have, if you're okay, we're going to have some questions for your group or some comments. And I'll start with Ms. Pangarelli again over there in the east side.
And also the science person. What did you purchase with your $750 check?
Hi. So what I wanted to do was bring some outdoor ed indoors because it's expensive to take the kids outdoors and do stuff like that. And one of the units that we cover in fourth grade is weather. Talking about weather from a book is kind of dull. We cover erosion, weathering, deposition, and then a lot of it is just the scientific model of what a variable is. So we bought 8 stream tables that can cover an entire table so 4 kids can work at it at the same time, and then enough sand that will last for 15 years probably. It costs just as much to ship the sand as it does for the stream tables, which was crazy. But that's basically what it was for that whole weather unit. And it's great because I talked to the 6th grade and the 7th grade within our school, and they all have weather units too, and they can do it. So I was like, it'll last more than just the 124th graders that we have within the school. So that's what it's for.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Mrs. Doan?
So what's with the little library? In class? Yeah.
Hi, I'm Nancy Guy. I'm really fortunate because I started a brand new 3-4 ELD classroom at Sundance. So, and my kids are all English language learners. Several of them their families are from Iraq. One little boy's family is from China, and then most of the rest of the children's families are from Mexico. So it's a brand new classroom, and so we I made a really cute reading corner. We have some new books for them, and they, typically, because they're from somewhere else, they don't have supplies, so we've provided all those sorts of things for them.
And are the books, explain to me about what the books are.
Books for their reading levels, basically, books for them to help improve their reading.
Okay, so just basically in English, not like a translation type book or anything?
No, they're all books in English.
Okay.
Yes.
That sounds very fun. I often wanted to sit off in a corner and read when I was in school. Congratulations to all of you for all your hard work.
Mrs. Connect?
So, are these competitive grants that you had to write applications for?
Yes, they are.
Well, very good in rising above your competition on that, and congratulations for going through the extra work to write out an application. I know how busy you all are as teachers, and taking that extra step is really terrific, and it benefits your kids. So we're really grateful for that. Congratulations.
I have one question. You can all, as a group, select one person to answer this question. Somebody who hasn't spoken yet. There you go. One thing we're really big on is replicating success. We talk to our students that come here. We talk to teachers, administrators, bus drivers, whoever. We want to know how can we possibly replicate success in PUSD to make us continually better, always refining. What you're doing, a lot of other teachers either A, don't know how to do, or B, don't know how to do, not well enough, but don't know the whole process to be able to be successful like you were. Again, I do this often, you're talking to a group of teachers who want to be you and get some grant for a wonderful idea for their class, whether it be science, English, language, arts, whatever it may be. Tell them how they get to the position you are in that process. Or a tip, better way of saying it.
Well, I've been in the position since starting the attendance incentive program, Every Day Counts at my school, searching out every possible form of funding that we could come across. So it takes a lot of, looking online, talking to people, networking, going out and asking people for donations and that kind of thing. It really just takes a lot of grunt work and a lot of perseverance.
Okay, and then when you finally get to the grant writing process, give them one tip to write a successful grant, maybe something that was a winning edge that you had in your grant.
Well, I think this particular grant was pretty user-friendly when it came to what we had to write. We didn't have to jump through many, many hoops for it. I think as long as you're real specific and you're able to let them know how it really will benefit the students, it worked pretty well.
Okay, good, so application, that makes sense. You know, it's one thing to say, I want money to do a cool science project. It's another thing to say, here's how the kids are going to rise above. Here's what's going to give them a thirst for knowledge. So good. So I appreciate it. Well, thank you for being here tonight. We appreciate it. And we got your pictures already, so you can't escape that. So thank you again, and have a great night.
President Bullock, is there room for me to squeeze in 3 more recognitions?
There's always room for recognitions.
I was
Thank you.
hoping you would say that,
Is
sir.
Mrs. Dunsey, you're finished? Okay. Dr. Stifler, take it away, sir.
President Bullock, members of the board, I'd like to recognize Raymond S. Kellis student Patrick Fernandez as he won the team title in the Nature Valley First Tee Open. Listen to this carefully. This past weekend at Pebble Beach Golf Links in Pebble Beach, California. Patrick teamed up with tour professional Michael Allen and represented the state of Arizona, as well as Kellis High School. Patrick showed great perseverance and dedication throughout the game. Congratulations, Patrick. The Arizona Cardinals have selected Liberty's High School's Mark Smith as the High School Coach of the Week. For his outstanding performance last week, they will be presenting Coach Smith with a certificate and a $2,000 check for the Liberty High School football program very soon. And last, on recognition here, Centennial High School held a ribbon-cutting ceremony on September 21st for the newly installed Peace Pole, which was donated by the Peoria Rotary Club. The ceremony was timely in that it celebrated peace on International Peace Day. The ceremony was attended by several members of the Rotary, as well as Peoria Council member Bill Patena and our very own governing board member Kathy Connect, and I congratulate them all.
Thank you very much, and thank you everyone for sticking that out with us. This is a great time for us to see what success PUSD breeds, and hopefully it's replicatable, and hopefully it's contagious. So thank you for all that you do. Next item on our agenda is board recognitions. We'll start to my, we picked on you twice. We'll start to my left. Oh, and I apologize. I was remiss. I wanted to recognize our honorary board member, Amy, who is with us tonight. And I was going to have her take Mr. Jonigan's spot, but she wanted to stay over there, and that's okay. So, Mrs. Doan, any board recognitions for this week?
No, I don't have anything.
Okay, Mrs. Connect.
Peace Pole ditto.
Okay. Do you have any like PowerPoint presentation or anything, or what do you got?
I was going to
Okay.
talk about the Peace Pole. It was a really moving event. It was lovely.
Very cool. Thank you for representing. Appreciate that. Okay, and I don't have anything either, so I appreciate, well, actually, you know what? I just want to give kudos to our superintendent. I had the chance to go to an employee chat today at Ira A. Murphy School, which I told was the best school in the district by the people there, so that's awesome. It was strange. They said, hey, welcome to the best school. And I said, well, thank you. I'm happy to be here. And Dr. Stifler and Mr. Hicks were there to ask questions and have a great employee chat, and I really appreciate how honest and straightforward and just down to earth they were. It was an open conversation. It wasn't a administrator and teacher or administrator and local staff. It was very much, what are we going to do together to move this place to the next level? Again, as we've talked before, going from 20% to 90% efficiency and greatness is relatively easy. Going from 90 to 100% is extremely difficult. And I was very proud to see our top in the state CFO and our future Arizona Superintendent of the Year, Dr. Stifler, sitting down and actually just trying to work out solutions. So it was refreshing to see that they just mean business and they want to make things move forward. So that's exciting. So,
Mr. Bullock, you made me remember something else about our CFO and our superintendent. I saw them on Tuesday morning at the PBS studios. There was a very well-attended, very powerful group of people, right? From lots of legislators, which was wonderful that they were there, and the governor, and Dr. Stifler was in the audience, but Superintendent Cowan from Mesa was there, and Superintendent Hightower from Tolleson were some of the speakers, along with President Crow from ASU. And the topic was about all-day kindergarten and how important that is in fostering literacy in our youngest students up until age 3rd grade. And what a huge disadvantage students who don't get that what a disadvantage that is for them and what a great advantage it is for those students to do. So there, unfortunately, nobody said, and yes, we're going to fully fund all-day K in Arizona from now on, which was my fantasy. That did not happen, but it was an important step in opening the dialogue and getting those leaders in the room to understand how critical that is for some of our youngest students.
Awesome. Thank you for representing. All right, next item on the agenda. Get on to the meat of the show. And anybody at this point now, if you've been honored or recognized or you're here to see somebody, we invite you to stay to the end because it just keeps getting better and better and better. However, if you want to leave now to go get dinner and celebrate, we will not take it personal. Now would be the time. Thank you for being here. Again, last chance to stay. And no takers. That's all right. All right, number 6, request to address the governing board regarding matters not included on the agenda. We do have, well, 2 speakers on 1, correct? Okay, is that legal? I don't want to have to arrest them. There's a police officer outside for doing 2 on 1 sheet. Okay, because they both look cool in their Zuni Hills shirt, so that's why we're going to let them violate policy. Very, very strict. So number 6, Elizabeth McClellan, can't even say that fast, McClellan, and Tracy Buscemi. You told me that, and wow, my short-term memory is shot. I apologize. Tracy, thank you for being here tonight.
Good evening, Dr. Stifler and distinguished members of the board. I'm Tracy Buscemi. I teach 3rd grade at Zuni Hills Elementary, and this is Elizabeth McClellan. She teaches 4th grade also there. And we're here to talk to everybody about our, of course, our school does many, many amazing things, but one thing that we do really recognize is our veterans in our community. Each year at Zuni, we hold an unbelievable Veterans Day Assembly. Over the years, we've been able to honor hundreds of veterans within our community, some linking back to the Civil and Spanish-American Wars. Each year, every American war is recognized. It's important that we teach our children to respect our country and to thank our veterans for protecting and serving. In addition to this, over the past 5 years, we've had the privilege of honoring 2 World War II vets that have been able to be at our school. And this year, we are expecting a 3rd Grizzly family member from a World War II vet. Every year, this community event brings forth more and more veterans. As a result of this, our school has made these assemblies more and more special for these veterans every year. A slideshow is displayed that has over 150 pictures of the families and their veterans who are living or passed away that are directly related to Zuni Hills, and one of them is actually a staff member in middle school. Attending veterans is usually between 50 and 60 annually, and it seems to be growing every year.
This year, we've looked outside of our school to incorporate the community in our assembly. We have invited Greenway High School's ROTC club to come and present the colors. Our Feeding High School Liberty is bringing over their jazz band, and they will be playing patriotic songs and also performing the national anthem. Our entire school gets involved in preparing for this. We have kindergartners all the way up through 8th grade writing letters, making posters, decorating the school so that our veterans feel welcome when they attend Zuni Hills. Even our very own junior high band and choir will be performing this year. Our National Honor Society and Student Council helped to set up for the event. Advanced Art creates banners. PTSO provides small tokens of appreciation to our vets who attend. And then, of course, we provide and serve breakfast to them when they are there. This year, we are going to be celebrating our 5th annual assembly to honor our vets. And in the past, we have invited board members and district administration to our event. Unfortunately, we've only had 1 attend in the last 4 years we've invited, and that was, we had the honor of having Joe McCord attend our event 1 year. We're hoping this year, though, will be different, and that is why Tracy and I are here to speak on behalf of Zuni Hills. We're here to extend a personal invitation to the district administration and to the board members so that you can come and see firsthand what an awesome community of Grizzlies we have at Zuni Hills. So I hope that you will plan to attend on the morning of November 10th at 9 a.m.
Duly accepted. I know I was talking to him before. I said I feel bad because all 6 of my kids have gone to Zuni Hills, and I've been there a couple times. Went and spoke to them, as we mentioned, on the override and the 4-day school week and whatnot. So I feel bad. So I accept your invitation. So And thank you for what you do for them. I think it's so important for our kids. I think we, and this is my personal opinion, we're living very comfortable and very safe right now. And a lot of kids and a lot of adults, for that matter, don't know what it was like to have to be, extremely patriotic and living in fear and literally giving and sacrificing your life, if necessary, for your country. We don't see that anymore, thankfully, because of what they did. So I'm glad that you honor them. Thank you for doing that.
This is my most favorite event that I look forward to at Zuni Hills. Again, like Tracy said, we do a lot, but it just really, truly is humbling to see these vets there, to see their smiles on their faces, to see that they're being honored and appreciated. And it truly is an emotional time, just to see them being honored.
And at November 10th and time?
9 a.m.
At 9 a.m., okay, got it.
You come early, I'm sure we can get you breakfast and coffee.
Orange juice?
Orange juice, please.
Sweet, don't do coffee, but thank you for offering. Good, yes.
There are a variety of events at a number of our schools, so maybe the 5 of us could get together and talk about how we can divide and conquer and have a board presence at as many of our school functions as possible.
Great. Okay, I get Zuni.
All right,
So-
thank you so much.
Not that anybody else can't come. I don't want to, I dominate Zuni, just because that legacy thing. But thank you very much for being here tonight. We appreciate it. All right, next item on the agenda is number 7, address agenda and consider adoption or recommend changes. A chance for us board members to rearrange the agenda as necessary. Any changes? Changes? All right, we move on. Next item on the agenda is number 8, presentation discussion of recommended budget and staff compensation process. Mr. Hicks, welcome, sir.
Sounds great. Good evening, President Bullock, members of the board, Superintendent Darwin Stifler, colleagues and community members. Thank you very much for allowing me to present tonight. Tonight is an informational item. It is not action. We would like to bring back an action item, but we had a discussion about 2 board meetings ago. I think it was August 25th. At that board meeting, talking about just some changes or some input from the board. And so what I've done is taken our current process and tried to incorporate some of what I heard from the governing board at that time into into another budget process. And so I've identified those in yellow to highlight, and I do have some other additional attachments. I put everything in paper in front of you, but everything that I put in a packet in front of you is actually what's attached to the governing board. But sometimes, I don't know if you're like me, sometimes you like paper to look at it and everything. So if it's all right, I'm just going to go through kind of some of the changes. If you want to say something, you can at that point. Then I'll go through some of the other attachments, and then we'll come back to this. What I'd like to do is hear enough comment that we would be able to bring back an actual actionable item later on for the board to actually approve the process, if that sounds all right. Sound all right? All right, so similar, we'll start the process in November where I start creating some of the budget tracking sheets that I use, doing some of the budget revenue projections. We'll bring Ms. Myers and her team into it so that we can get the right revenue calculations. JLBC starts doing, so when you see Executive Director Richard Stievnek start making some of those road shows out there, JLBC will start putting their projections together, what kind of JLBC, I'm sorry, is the Joint Legislative Budget Committee, and so they're really an independent organization that supports the legislature, and so it provides a lot of their base data on what the budget's looking like, what the previous one looks like, and then going forward, what the future budget looks like in Arizona. Will there be? I am hopeful too. There was a very powerful meeting on Tuesday on All Day K, so maybe there'll be something on All Day K. I think you also have other elements talking about capital and other things that will be putting pressure on to look at how this budget is put together in that sense. JLBC puts a funding projection. It is just a projection, so just as an example, last year, I think they came out with 1.15%. It actually came out less than 1% for the actual budget, so it is a projection based on basically October and November's data. So we'll look at the, I think that's the CPI or the GDP calculation that they do, and then put that in for Arizona. We'll look at our 40th day enrollments, so our ADM, so even though I think there's an enrollment report on We'd look at other enrollment reports, and we've given some reports to the board where growth, we have more kids, but really let's look at the 40th day. Sometimes it peaks at that time, sometimes it goes down. We'll look at our trends, we'll look at all the information. Current year funding is still in play, and so for next year's budget, we'll definitely have to make sure we're taking that into consideration, similar to what we've done in the past. Then we will work on the budget team. And so design a process and identify and notify the budget team. So one of that is, and I'll go to that later, but I do have the makeup. So one of the questions I've received is who's on the budget team, who's on the compensation committee. I'll go to that as a future sheet to see if we want to look at if the board has any input on making any changes there. But then once we identify that, the team, we could set up a schedule. Well, that's later point. But then we would identify one of those members, classified as certified and admin, to come to every board meeting to provide the governing board instead of quick things through me or more full conference communication, not just to the governing board, but also maybe internally and then externally on our website, in the polls, and the bulletin, and then to the governing board. We'll have those members provide those updates as we're going through that process. So that is actually repeated many times, and every month we come, and so there's a lot of yellow in here for that as well, but that is the same thing happening. So once a month we would have those representatives come and give a report to the governing board. Then going to create expectations. Our first meeting, we really worked to brainstorm and look at how the year ended, identify some of those priorities, how we're going to communicate, work with the board, work with the budget team on that. But then also at the end of that first yellow bulleted is to incorporate the governing board priorities into this process. And so this is moving it up sooner. So this would be, we could talk about some of this tonight, we could talk about it at the next board meeting, maybe identify some of those priorities sooner so it gets incorporated into the budget process at an earlier point, where previously it was the January retreat that we'd have with the board, where we listened to a lot of presentation, a lot of feedback. This is moving that earlier up in the process. Set up the meeting schedule, then we would begin, December would be to begin the budget team meetings. And then this is also define the actual roles. Who's the facilitator, who's the timekeeper, who's the note taker, to have more defined roles and to understand. I know that sometimes we become complacent. We have a lot of the same people. Some people didn't know that I don't even vote in that process. So let's make those clear delineations of who those members are and what roles they're providing as we're going. Once again, as a duplicate, post an update on the website and the polls, provide something to the governing board. This is where we previously had, but this is maybe a good time to maybe review the budget, with the budget team, review the priorities that the governing board has had. I didn't know if we were having a retreat. We haven't heard, we have new superintendent, so I didn't know at that time. But maybe this time we could look at the governing board retreat and just give an update where we are on some of those priorities in that sense. So this would be a chance to look at that again, and then once again, continue with the communication as we're going. So I'm not going through some of the points that we've already talked about. Now, February is the point where we receive a lot of data. So we talk about a lot of the things that drive our utility costs, our benefit costs. State retirement we'll know back in December. But we're going to incorporate all of those fixed expenses that we have to pay no matter what. We can't choose, as Darwin has said, as we go around to some of our employee chats, we can't choose not to pay the utility bill. So we do have to schedule and identify some of those cost increases, much like state retirement, much like health insurance, if that's what is going, if that's going up or if that's changing. We need to incorporate that as soon as possible. We incorporate it into the budget, and then we also, at that point in February, is when we begin the compensation committee. So as we're working down the track and identifying what's available, we then break off how is the money going to be spent in the compensation. So budget team works through the process and how much, and then what's available for compensation. Compensation committees then work on how that money, if a big pot is given, how is that split up, and then between the split up between the three groups, the admin, the certified, classified, then how within those groups is the money being distributed. Once again, post an update, give one to the board, give one, post one on the website and in the polls. And then this is just one new event with the new legislative changes to the Adjacent Ways project. If there's anything in Adjacent Ways, we do need to incorporate that into the budget process, and that now needs to be incorporated with the SFB processes they've done, as we have new rules for Adjacent Ways projects going forward. So those are just in summary kind of how, so you can see really focus on more communication, get decisions made, either priorities from the governing board sooner, incorporated into the process, and then identify some people for those communications. So I'm going to try to get out. I don't know if I did that right. These are already tabbed, right? So the first one, well, let me go back to the first one. One we wanted to provide, this was just informational, just demographic on who our staff members are. I think HR presented this, Dr. Davidson presented this to our council a week ago, and I said, hey, that's pretty good information, let's just send it to the board, just so you know. So this is just the makeup of, by number of employees. It is not the FTEs, but it is the number of employees that we have, I think, as in August deadlines, date at that point. So just, this is just FYI. Nothing expected to do with it, but I just thought I'd share it with the board. Then the next two, this is where we've had a lot of conversation over the last 2 years, which is how do we then split up the process that identifies how much money is available? Are we going to do it by number of FTE in each of those three groups, or by the amount of salary that's paid in those three groups? And so this, similar to what you've seen the last 3 years, by FTE, here's the percentage breakout. And see if I get this right. And then by salary amount, the total amount paid breakout. And so now here you have a difference, so it swings, and this is the 26, 7, and 66%. That is one of the big decisions that we really need to land on, and I think if I look at some reflection of some of the issues we had last year, I think it's because we didn't really flush out this amount right here. What is it going to be? And this can be dealt with where we prefer to go one way or the other, but really the board has their preference that they could alter this in a sense and say, hey, let's add one, subtract one to something in that sense. But this is a lot of the crux of when the final amount is calculated, who is it going to and how much for their distribution from the compensation committees, what did they do with it then? The next was one we thought we'd do is let's provide a little context of what we're talking about, and this was brought up at the last meeting, and said maybe this is the perfect time to really relook at making some changes, because here's what we had to look at last year. And so at the bottom I wanted to put context of last year during the budget process we had inflation increase, override increase, and Prop 123 increase. And so it was looking at $14.5 million that we were dealing with how to distribute in that sense. This year with inflation funding at 1%, even though last year was at 0.99, just using around the same, you're roughly at around $1.7 million. So we have a lot less that we're looking at going forward in that sense. And so that was, just wanted to provide the context. That was a question that was asked, so I wanted to provide that. And then the other, the last piece of information I did want to just share is who is making up those membership of those committees. So I just wanted to share, here is the breakdown. I didn't put all their names because I don't want to have multiple pages here, but if you like, I could forward on the names of everybody. For the budget committee, certified, there are 6 members. For classified, there's 4, and admin, there's 4. For the compensation committee, certified has 15 people officially. Now, I will tell you at the compensation committee, we did say if you want to bring somebody, it's not a secret club in that sense. There might have been more people because I know there was more than 15 for there, and for the administrator, there might have been more than 14. Classified has 11, but I will tell you, I believe that 3 of those were administrative staff that had high amount of people that have classified staff, like Mr. Doug King in transportation moved over and did not sit with admin. He sat with classified since he has so many, and Sandra. So we had some of our staff members moved over there because they have so many classified. So they're included in that, even though they technically aren't classified staff in that sense. So I wanted to bring also just the makeup of those committees so that you could understand who is sitting there during that process. And I think that brings us too far. Back to the beginning. So hopefully that was a good summary. Hopefully it provided some information. I would say the other thing that has been brought up in the past that we probably want to look at is do we want to do anything with compression? So that has been talked about. There's been some attempts at trying to solve that, and then some backpedaling on those attempts in that sense, because it is a difficult situation when you're talking about give to one group more than the other group, and it becomes difficult in that situation. So that's just to throw it out there, if there'd be some discussion, or if you'd like to give some feedback on that. It is an informational, so we're hoping to get some conversation so that we would be able to identify changes to this or things that aren't included that we'd like to include and bring back as an action item.
Great, thank you, Mr. Hicks. I'm going to actually, this is a discussion amongst us. Let me tee this up a little bit by kind of the genesis of why we're talking about this. Not surprising to anybody, but earlier this year, I asked, as a possible solution, could we have a board member on the compensation, a non-voting board member on the compensation committee? And obviously, that wasn't the best idea in the world, but it was just a chance to say, how can we avoid really two problems every March when this comes up again? It's surprises to us, because we're not here every day, obviously. We're not in, we get reports, we do our research, we talk to people, but we're not here every day. And so that's why I wanted to, a way to do that is to have a board member at different compensation committee meetings. But really, again, it's to avoid surprises and to make sure that you're not going to get a group of, 30-something, 40-something people across the whole spectrum and have everybody agree on everything, no matter what. But I want the process to be an agreed-upon process. Because it's a whole different world when you can say, hey, I agree, the process went great. I didn't get my way, I didn't get everything I wanted, but the process was fair. And the perception that comes from that, and I've been on the board 3.5 years now, and every year this becomes a topic for heavy discussion and surprises and frustration, and just like, where'd that come from? So the idea, again, was to have more representation, and I had talked to Dr. Stifler about it as well, and I, for myself, am happy with the changes that you're proposing, that there's more information continually on a monthly basis, so when the decision does come, all the board members can go, yeah, okay, I've heard, I've had a chance to ask, I've done my research, I've done my due diligence. We may still vote differently, okay, that's fine, but at least we all come to it at the same agreed-upon process. No one feels left out, no one feels surprised, and there's as much transparency as possible. That would be, in my opinion, light years ahead of what's happened the past couple of years. And I think it would avoid a lot of problems to do that because, again, that knowledge is power. And I don't think we've had that as much as we should have over the past couple of years. So I think this is a very strong process to make sure there are no surprises when March, April timeframe comes. Other comments, questions, just chime in about this process. Because ultimately, this is, obviously the compensation committee will move forward, but the board, I think, wants to have a more cohesive or more of an attachment to the process, because it is so important. Whether we have an extra 10 million, whether we have less, 10 million less, whatever that amount is, that's kind of irrelevant to the conversation. The process has to be perfect, as close to be as perfect as possible. Comments or questions from my other fellow board members, because this will eventually become a process and a voting item.
Mr. Hicks, I'd like to get names, if possible, for the budget team and compensation committee.
Both.
Yes, thank you.
Do you want that in can we do that in a Thursday report? Or is that just something you can just hand off to us?
Well, I can send it to you tomorrow.
Okay, is that good?
That's good,
Okay.
thank you.
Mrs. Connect, Mrs. Doan, comments, questions, suggestions to move this to a more perfect process?
One of the ideas that was thrown out is the possibility of putting site-level administrators in their own category. And maybe it could be something that the board decides, but maybe that would be a topic that the committees engage in and give a recommendation about. It seems to me that the numbers of the different groups in the compensation committee, you mentioned that while the lists here is 15, 11, and 14, that it sounded like there were a lot of extra administrators that came, maybe not. But I think, to be fair, even though the size of those employee groups vary quite a bit, that the number of representatives from those groups should remain constant and equal.
I'm sorry, President Bullock, members of the board.
So if there are 10 people representing admin, there should be 10 people representing teachers and 10 people representing certified, so that no one group, if it ever came down to a vote on which way you were going, that no one group is overrepresented or underrepresented.
President Bullock is a member of this board, and we could look at this different, but each group goes off on their own, and so they're not voting on other groups. So the classified is not voting on the certified. Although we could look at, if we want 10, 10, and 10, does all 30 look at all different, how each group is breaking up? So the teachers only decide for the teachers, the admin decides for the admin, because it's already been predetermined based on if we're using FTE or what, how much is going to each group once the budget process comes to what's available.
So by the time it gets to the compensation committee, how much each group gets is already decided. That's decided by the budget committee?
It was actually, we've had the conversation the last 2 years at the board retreat, and that is then used as that conversation happens with the board, put into the budget process.
Yeah, although last retreat, it wasn't really decided, it was kind of, discussed.
President, both members of the board, they're non-voting items. They're informational, so there is no official
Right.
decision. It's a conversation that's had with the board. And yes, you're right, there was a long conversation last January about it, but that feedback is then put in, working with the administration of what's the best way to go.
I think that was that was one of the issues that was kind of surprising when it came to us. So maybe that we can formalize that structure more so that going into it, we know how that all shakes out.
President Bullock, members of the board, that is one of the objects of tonight, is to have that conversation so that you vote on that amount up front, that split
Okay.
up front, so that we know that.
That would definitely be an improvement to the
Which is-
process.
yes.
Quick question, is there any logical relevance to the number of people on a specific committee to how many people are in that committee? If we did 10, 10, 10, or 13, 12, 15, does it matter if there's 3 people that are selected from each committee or 20? Is the amount of heads in the room have any real bearing on the end result?
President Bullock, members of the board, for the membership of the compensation committee, they're all making their own decisions, and I'll be honest, I think a few years ago, there was 40 members on the compensation for the teachers. Because the way it's split up and they do make their own decisions, I don't know that the number, I think you want a good cross-section to make sure you have high school, elementary, and all those in that sense, but, so as long as we have a good cross-section, that's normally what we're looking for. You don't want maybe all the teachers at one school on this committee dominating, and it's an elementary school, then that focus. So I think we're looking for some variety in that sense, diversity.
Are we allowing those committees to choose the number and composition for just their committee?
President Bullock, members of the board, we haven't in the past, but if that's the will of the board, we can definitely do that.
President Bullock, if I might add, what might be helpful, and I wasn't here, and I'm sure a lot of it happened, but maybe we could put in more clearly, is what I would call the loop-out process. As those committees keep working, how are they sharing information? How is that classified group sharing out with all the other classified employees who weren't there? How is that certified group sharing out with all the other? So that it's not a closed decision, where there's a perception could be that it was a cabal making that kind of a decision, but how do we loop that out? And if we can do that effectively, then the number of people in the room, I think, is less the determinant than the quality of the communication to the larger group.
Okay.
I'm thinking that I want broader input to that first decision, that how do we divvy up to the different groups? And because I think different stakeholders have a variety of different inputs, and that admin and classified and board members and certified should all be in on that, and not be held off until, just to make decisions amongst their own group.
So you're saying a group at the beginning, a well-comprised group to decide,
As a
here's how we
district,
split.
as a district.
And then it goes to the individual groups to divvy up what's already been decided.
Right, as a
Okay.
district, what is in the best interest of the district, if in fact there are extra dollars to be divvied up, what's in the best interest of the whole district, and get some of the other stakeholders involved.
So it's really-
That's what I would like.
So that's a 2-tiered approach then, because you're doing level 1 is determined, let's say there's $1 million is for instructional purposes or illustrative purposes. $1 million, the first wave or the first decision is how much of that goes to each of the 3 groups. And then once that X amount of dollars goes to that group, then they, in their group, whether they have 5, 10, or 20 people, decides how that's split up?
Yes,
Is that what you're saying? So it's
yes.
basically, it's a 2-level approach?
Yes,
Okay.
that's right. Now I have a different question.
I have one more about that.
Sorry, yeah.
So once it reaches, like, say, the teachers, And they can decide whether they wish to address the compression issue, right? So we can kind of leave it in there, and how many of them make sure, you know, that those are dissatisfied, have a good voice in that, because that is a very sticky point.
Although I can see a mixed group of stakeholders deciding as a group that that is something that we wanted to address within that group. So I don't think we hold off on the compression conversation until round two, so to speak, either.
Yeah, we could put in a little note in there.
I mean, it's a priority thing.
Yeah, it is.
Is it a variable in a first level discussion, compression? Is it a variable that needs to be inputted in the first level?
I think it is.
Cause us to consider how the divvying up goes.
Exactly.
President Bullock, members of the board, I think that is a critical question right there, and what would be very helpful for administration going forward, not necessarily a number today, but that somewhere, perhaps in December, perhaps in January, could be as late as February, that says of any available monies, X amount of money is to be directed towards compression issues in these employee groups, and X amount of money is dedicated towards the classic process or the process detailed here. But that would be a governing board direction, appropriate to do that early, to say, we realize we don't have enough, but we want to do something on this. We understand that it's important, cost of living kind of a raise. I don't know what the board would say, but we have the opportunity to build that kind of an opportunity into that.
That sounds good.
Or to do other things as well. Compression is just one of the many issues facing in salary and compensation all of our employees. It's perhaps the one that keeps coming up the most, but it's certainly not the only one.
Right, and that's why I'm thinking getting the stakeholders together to talk about what are our collective priorities? Is it compression? Is it retention and attraction? I mean, what is it? What are they?
President Bullock, members of the board, Mr. Hicks, would it be possible for us to convene the compensation committees a bit earlier to get their advice on any available monies on what might be done to prepare a recommendation to the board? Would that work in about January or so?
Yeah, President Bullock, members of the board, superintendent, we could do anything. I mean, it's your people, it's our people. We could do whatever we think is best. Can we start the compensation committee in January instead of February? Absolutely, to bring them back.
That might be a way to address that issue, to get that input that I think I hear the governing board asking for. I would strongly recommend to the board that giant churning process of building the budget, everybody needs to be informed of, but that's the administrative job to do that, okay? If, and it's a big if there's extra money or new money, let's call it new money because it's not extra money, if there's new money, then administration absolutely wants direction on what are the governing board's priorities on where we need to do that. And it makes perfect sense for me to me at least, for the governing board to say, you know, I'd be interested to know what classified says about this. I'd be interested to know what certified says about this. I'd be interested to know what the administrative. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. I'm trying to read between those lines. Would that help?
Yeah, that would help. I mean, 2 years ago, we said attraction and retention, but the compression issue was there. And then last year, attraction and retention really kind of bubbled to the surface. But that was us sitting around and talking about it without any much outside input.
Just our emails and stuff.
Yeah,
you know?
so, yes, it would be helpful to us to make decisions that impact every single person in this district if we knew what they were thinking.
So President Bullock, members of the board, if I could, so it sounds like, though, I would not say, let's get the compensation committee to get their opinion of 30 people. Let's do a survey of all of our groups to find out what they're saying. I'm only saying that because 2 years ago, there was a board agenda item to address compression. I don't know if you remember, we had a lot of staff members say, you better pull that. Why are you doing this in that sense? And so there was the people that showed up for the compensation committee 2 years ago said, let's address compression, But then people that have been here 20, 30 years said, oh my gosh, I can't believe this situation, I can't believe what's being recommended and how people with maybe 8 years are getting equal to what I'm getting, that's not fair. And we pulled the item, and we started all from new in that sense. So I would not want just a limited, whoever showed up, maybe we dress with compensation or compression, and maybe we don't, based on who shows up to that meeting. I would rather do a survey district-wide to give feedback to the board of what everybody's thinking.
Let me
Sounds
take,
good.
yeah, agreed. Let me play devil's advocate with my fellow board members, and Dr. Stifler, I obviously want your and Mr. Hicks' professional opinion. I'm weary of getting, it's going to sound odd, but I think you'll understand what I'm saying. I'm weary of getting too close to the process as a school board member. And the reason I say that is ultimately the school board, this lay board, if you will, of outsiders, but still part of the family, ultimately we have to make a decision no matter what happens, whether everybody comes, yay, everyone comes with pitchforks and into the city square with flames, whatever it may be, we ultimately, we are decision makers which way it's going to go, and you're going to make some people happy and some people not happy. So I almost want to have a slight arm's distance to allow the experts, which I'm not, experts to be able to work and bring the suggestions in their communities, if you will, to us. So again, I know it's sort of what we're saying, but I want to, again, this is me talking, I want to be a little weary of being too close to the process and too much of a micromanager, but still being involved in the process, because ultimately, we'll have to make the final decision, whether it's popular or unpopular. And there has to be a little bit of arm's distance away to make that correctly, in my opinion.
No disagreement.
Okay.
Mr. Hicks, how cumbersome would it be to find out exactly the details of our compression issues?
President Bullock, members of the board, that's just a very general question.
Yeah.
We would have to identify. As we've heard during last year's, and I met with some teachers, everybody's got a different definition of what the compression issue is. So if you define the parameters, I would be able to tell you.
Okay, what I'm talking about basically is teachers, the difference in salary and some people say, well, they just got hired on and they're making as much as I am, I've been here 15 years. And what is the difference, where is that hitting? Who is it hitting the most? And how many, and I'm basically just wanting to know, how cumbersome would that be for us to actually understand who's getting that? Well, I've been here 15 years, why don't I make more than a new hire,
President Bullock, members of the board, for new hires in the last 2 years, how many of them are making more than I can get a number of that.
Well, yeah, and I don't just
All
mean
around
new
this
hire, I mean the person that's been here 8 years, why are they making the same as somebody that's been here 20? Whatever, all through our whole groups, it seems like the longer we retain a teacher, the more they should make, correct? That's the way it seems.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah,
So,
I'll work with Mr. Hicks, I'll work with Dr. Davidson, I'll prepare a draft that I can get to you, but generally what happened, we had a plan so that would never happen.
yes,
And then 2007
Right.
happened, right? And we had to keep raising the base, or that part of attract
Right.
and retain would not have happened.
I understand that.
And so as we froze that, so you can, we're projecting $1.7 million. If you
Right.
wanted to fix it for all employee groups, that doesn't begin.
I know, and
address that.
I know we can't fix it, but to address it
Yes, ma'am.
in some fashion, we need to know more detail on who's getting hurt the most, or things like,
ma'am.
we need to know what's
And
going
it's-
on.
And I would say it's also across all employee groups.
Yes, I'm sure.
And also, you bring up an interesting point. Is it, with the current financial structure and anticipated increase or stay the same, is it addressable? Because as you said, again, that's just the question that begs to be answered. There are going to be problems with compensation. Are they even addressable? If you had $30 million more, these 20 things are addressable reasonably. we have 1.7 million, even a million, whatever the projected amount is, these 19 things are truly not addressable right now unless you do a wholesale rewrite of your entire structure and financial position, which we're not going to do. But this one thing is addressable, for example, and that turns back to the committees to say, here's what we're saying. It's not going to, although we want to, it's not going to actually address compression. Let's not even go down that path because it's going nowhere for whatever this small amount of money is. Let's talk about base increase, resource increase, whatever. So I want to be realistic in that respect too. What is addressable with projected increases?
President Bullock, members of the board, we can address it that way. There's other ways. If compression is a priority of the board, we could just say 10% off the top of whatever's available every single year goes to address compression. So it might not be, the full amount might be able to be addressed, and then we'll have to define what that is. The caution is that wherever we define and draw that line, there's going to be people that were on the other side of that line that are going to be complaining, and I don't mean that in such a negative tone that it came out, and there'll be concerns on where we drew the line, where it is. And so, I mean, I've had people that have been here 24 years and say, hey, I got frozen 22 years ago for so long, or this was promised me, not given to me, I've been compressed. So it is the compression issue. When you say it, everybody's got their own interpretation of what it means. I know I normally talk about the 6 years of freezes that I was told about, that we had salary freezes for 6 years. That's what I talk about, the compression. But everybody truly does have their own, what it means to them.
I'd rather leave that to the level 2 decision-making. I don't want, as a board, and again, 1 of 5 votes, I don't want to become a micromanager and deciding for the experts, which are classified, certified, and administrative. I want them to decide those hard decisions about, here's X amount of dollars, 100,000, 200,000, whatever it may be. How is it best to fit your group? Because ultimately, that's who they should be caring about. They should look out for themselves. They should look out for number 1. And us as a board should guide, should lead, and decide, and then we have to live with that. So.
Mr. Hicks' idea of a survey, we could accomplish quite a bit. We could ask people to rank order their priorities out of each employee group and quantify that and bring that before the board.
And that would help alleviate surprises, because ultimately, as I mentioned, we have to make the decision, good, bad, or indifferent. I want to make the decision based on the will of the groups. And it'll be a hard decision. No matter what happens, it's going to be a hard decision. But it would be nice to have the will of the groups permeate that decision. So a survey to start the process.
President Bullock, members of the board, I think that'll provide some additional information to the board on how to go forward on the compression issue, so I think that's good. I think the split of how we split up the 3 groups probably needs to be decided as well. I don't know if I don't know we said would go by survey. I think that's more of a board. We've left it in the board. I will tell you, other districts, sometimes they will artificially take a % from one group and move it to another. So I don't know if we want to have a conversation tonight, look at the 2 different, come up with a recommendation. But that would be one that I think clear delineation up front of how that split is will also be very
Could you show us what that would look like? I mean, it's hard for us to just pick numbers out of the air with what we would like. If you could show us, well, we could do it this way, and this would be the result, or we could do it this way, and this would be the result. That would be very helpful for us.
Run some scenarios.
And even know, well, if you do this, this is the upside and this is the downside. And I would even request, if we put out a survey, that it is not just a what do you think. I kind of disagree with you. I think that our district works better when we're making decisions that affect the whole rather than us as individuals. It's kind of like, being in a family. So if the survey goes out and says, okay, we could address compression and why compression is bad, and because I'm sure there are employees within our ranks that don't even understand what that's all about. So kind of use it as an educational tool as well. These are some of the issues that we're facing. Certainly let people know that it's unlikely that we're going to have a lot of funds to address much of any of it, but these are the things that we're facing. These are the challenges. If we address this might be helped, this might be hurt, so that as long as we're reaching out and communicating to the employees, use it as an educational tool as well, and see what they think. My experience has been that our staff members are very intelligent people, They have huge brains and big hearts, and we might come up with some solutions that we haven't considered yet.
Certainly do the survey early in the process, and it was a mistake on my part to pretend that that would only inform the board. It would certainly inform leadership as well on what to do.
I have a personal request, and, well, maybe my fellow board members too. Could you send us the funky-looking chart? You know, with the circle on the outside? Just so I could review that. You
President,
know, where the outer rim is the money that we have to deal with from year to year? Yeah, that one. I'd appreciate that. And then I have one other question. Help me with my memory. When 301 passed, it was supposed to give, was it 2% or the rate of inflation?
it was 2% of the rate of inflation, whatever's less.
Whatever's less, right? And that went away, and so we sued, and then we won. And so why are we getting 1% next year,
The rate of inflation.
the rate of inflation? Okay.
President Bullock, members of the
This is
board,
artificial
sometimes they
anyway.
do the process earlier, sometimes later, but they actually do an actual calculation based on what was identified in Prop 301 to calculate what the rate of inflation is. And when they did it in October, it was 1.14%, but as they waited and continued through the process, by the time it came to March, it had dropped to 0.99.
Question, in this whole process, in some places you innovate, in some places you R&D, rip off and distribute, which I'm a big fan of at the appropriate time. Can we R&D a proven way to do this correctly? We can't be the only district who's going through these questions. I mean, we're talking about finite items here. We're not talking about innovating in some new science class and creating something that doesn't exist. We're taking a finite group of people with a finite amount of money and trying to achieve really one or two end goals. Can we R&D from something that does work somewhere else in the country, or that at least helps us morph maybe into a third solution that everyone goes, "Oh, that's actually reasonable"?
President Bullock, members of the board, I would like to think we've been doing that as
Okay.
we go along. We have new people come on that come from other districts. We talk. I met with 4 CFOs on Wednesday, or 3 other ones on Wednesday. We all share what our process, what are we doing, what are you looking at, what other things. So we do that, I think, on a regular basis. Can we continue and do more? Yes, we could definitely look at that. I will say that the budget team, I believe, now I'm biased since I'm part of the budget team, they could bring up anything, and I will tell you, we talk about almost everything. Let's look at this. Can we cut this? Why is this operating efficiently? Do we do that? I'll bring in people to talk about that in that sense, because I don't know all the answers. And so we do a good job of poking and prodding everything in that sense. And so can we continue? Yes, we can continue to share with maybe different districts, because I may go to the same 4 or 6 all the time, but I will start reaching out to more, learn about their process and what they're doing.
Yeah, and no cut to the finance. We just won a Best in the State award for our financial reporting, not too many months ago. What I mean is, I know you do that. I guess you've already answered my question, and to my detriment, for asking it, by saying there is no solution, there is no statistically accurate solution or mathematically accurate solution that fits a district of our size.
President Bullock, members of the board, I believe that. I believe the process we come up with, whatever it is, and we're modifying and adjusting now, will be better for us than anything we could copy and plug in. I will tell you, if we copy and plug in, we might lose block scheduling, you might lose our specials, you might lose our retiree health care, but they won't know, that model won't understand how important it is to our district and our success. And so I think we could look at some of those others and those elements, and we do some of that, and maybe we could do more, but really, truly, whatever we build will be what's best, because it's built homegrown and tailored to us. And that's
Then I retract my previous statement. I Control-Alt-Delete myself. Thank you. I'm happy to admit when I say something wrong. Any other comments or questions before we head on to final words from Mr. Hicks in direction? The survey obviously was the big that comes out of this. Any other direction? Anything we're missing, Dr. Stifler?
President Bullock, members of the board, Mr. Hicks, it's a good thing that we're talking about very real things, and we're not pretending that they're not real, and I'm really proud of us for that. It's also a good thing that it's September, and we have time. And so I had originally proposed to you a timeline that next meeting would bring that back. I think there's room to shift some things on the agenda and give us coming up on future agendas, to give us a little more time to prepare this. A little more time to prepare this. I think we're closer than it might feel right now to landing on a solution that's going to work. We also need to remain cognizant that we're talking about the projection here. We don't know what the Arizona legislature is going to do. We don't know. They have the power to create laws that affect us, that put mandates on us, or direct where funds go, or different kinds of things that we can't begin to say at this point. So in the most macro senses, we build a process that we can believe in and that we can build transparency around so that we can have continued confidence in that. We're going to be really good. And again, I thought we would be ready 2 weeks from now to bring that back, but I'd like another 2 weeks.
Sure. No, that's good. And I'm glad, thank you for allowing us to bring that much sooner than the end of February when we go, what? So thank you very much. All right, any other comments, questions? Good. Thank you, Mr. Hicks. Thank you, Dr. Stipp. Oh, Mrs. Doan, of course.
Mr. Hicks, I really appreciate your flexibility. I know it's sometimes hard for a financial person, the number person, but you're very good at it. And I really appreciate it because we need it.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for your hard work and your team, too.
Thank you very much. It is a team.
Mr. Hicks is a financial CPA guy with an incredible personality. That's what makes him that's why he's the top CFO in the state, and we're proud to have him here. No, I say that seriously, you are. You know that. Thank you, and we know that. We appreciate you doing that for us. All right, good. Ready? On to the next item on the agenda. Something that's been requested for quite a while, and we're very excited to hear about.
Yes.
Number 9, presentation on student athletic safety processes. Did I say processes? Feels so European real quick. Processes and procedures. Mr. Severson, thank you very much for being here tonight. We appreciate it.
President Bullock, members of the board, Dr. Stifler, it's quite an honor for me to be here tonight to speak on one of the areas that I work in that's near and dear to my heart, and that is district athletics. And tonight we're going to go through a little review of what we do and why we do it, but also talk about the safety precautions that we do take to ensure that it's a great experience for our kids and it's fulfilling along the way, and everything that we always do is aligned to everything that's on the board in the back with mission, purpose, goals, etc. So I'm honored to be here, and thank you for inviting me. A little background about the participation is very important, and we see that the quote on the top is what comes out of our athletic handbook, and that's to provide a beneficial and valuable experience for our students. And we look at the athletic experience as an enrichment to the classroom and a means to bring and develop students in other ways individually that may not get in the traditional classroom. When you look at some of the numbers, approximately 20 to 30% of a campus will be involved with athletics. In real numbers, that means about 4,000 of our kids at our high schools and about 5,000 at our elementary schools. So we have an opportunity to impact a significant amount of students and help develop them along their educational journey. Also, we see the collective benefits that come socially and culturally by sports and being involved with a group at a campus, and how that can raise the culture of the individual school and provide opportunities for engagement on different levels that aren't regularly in the normal math or English language classroom, but is also definitely a huge good component to the overall process. We as a district are committed to providing opportunities for student involvement that are connected to the curricular phase and also are educationally based. And that's the difference between club sports and you come to interscholastic activities. And that's why we embrace that, endorse that, because there is such a marriage between the two, and that symbiotic back and forth. There are standards that you must adhere to be eligible to participate, and we're working on educating the whole child, and athletics gives us a neat portion of that in order to make sure that we're doing that, and we are committed to doing the best we can. And in Peoria Unified. In order to do that, it takes structure, it takes tangible items, it takes people to support our kids, and we're very fortunate in Peoria Unified to have a great staff that helps support our kids. In particular, we look at health and safety. Athletic trainers and nurses are at all of our schools and are there to support our kids. The second bullet point about 2 athletic trainers per high school, which is quite significant compared to some of our peer districts. We're doing a great job there, and all of them are certified through the National Athletic Trainers Association, which is a wonderful organization, very wise, and bring lots of great things in terms of helping us adhere to health standards and safety standards for our students. Some of the other things that we do and have been doing for quite some time is providing CPR and first aid training for all of our coaches so that they might not be a healthcare professional, but they're there ready to serve and help our kids as needed. Also, we have automated external defibrillators, AEDs, at our schools, which we're very fortunate to have a partner in Sharon Bates and the Anthony Bates Foundation, and it's great that I can stand here and say we have an AED at every elementary school, and we have at least 3 or 4 at every high school, depending upon if they have a pool or not. So we're very honored with that, and Sharon is going to continue to do some more things. Maybe I'll come back and talk about that another time to help us keep moving along and take care of our kids. Also, bullet point number 3, the heat guidelines, which I know went through the board, and you had an opportunity to vet through that, was a great exercise of engaging some of our internal stakeholders and external stakeholders to come up with a comprehensive plan to deal with the extreme heat that we encounter here in Arizona and continue to move forward. And it was a great progressive revelation that we're excited about, and had a great committee, wrote those standards, and it helps our coaches, it helps our trainers, helps everybody understand what we should be doing, how should we be doing it to maintain safety for the kids. That committee, they volunteered to continue on. Thanks, what a great bunch of people. And I'm going to keep that committee moving forward, and we're going to move on, and we're going to start addressing other things that may come up in terms of evaluating all the practices that we have going on in Peoria Unified. And they are a great resource from healthcare professionals, some of our administrators, some of our coaches, and the significant piece of that are our athletic trainers from the district, and we have some awesome trainers. And I'm getting some great reports about the practice, the guidelines, and how that's impacted our students this fall as we've incorporated them. So that's exciting, and we're going to sit down with all the data points that we're accruing throughout this year, this fall, in the November meeting, and take a look at all the different things that have impacted that policy. Not only do we have internal things, and we look at frameworks that provide safety, we have internal structure, we also have external structures that help us. We are members of the Arizona Interscholastic Association for high school sports, and with that comes a big book of bylaws and rules, et cetera, but those are there also to help us provide safety and a great experience for our students as we collaborate with our other schools. One of the great things that came about, I think it was about 3 years ago, is the Brain Book class that the students and coaches have to take in order to participate. And it's an online class, and what it does is it creates awareness about what symptoms are, so you know if you might be concussed, as well as you can observe your teammates. And if anyone is concussed, from the officials to other players to coaches, the student can be taken off and addressed by the healthcare professionals, which we do have a protocol as a part of that.
Mr. Bullock? Mr. Sievertson, do we have the same sort of watchdog guidelines for heat illness?
Yes, President Bullock, members of the board, a part of the guidelines that we incorporated with our own practice, as well as we're going to align to what the AIA does in terms of the acclimatization and when you can do this and when you should do this. And then there's also educational information about detecting what heat illness might look like, what the symptoms are, and then if it does happen, it is addressed. And that is also versed in our guidelines. Thank you. Thank you. Also, as we're talking about external frameworks for safety, the AI does have the heat acclimatization bylaws that aligns to our new policy, that we're saying the same things, we're doing the same things. It's good stuff. It's founded in research, and we're excited to do that. And then also another great thing that's come about because of the concussion awareness of the last few years in terms of our country is amount of permitted contact in football that is allowed is also in our bylaws. And then also for our soccer students, the amount of heading that is allowed, there's a bylaw that helps regulate that and make sure that we're not excessive in doing that. And I'm glad to say that I believe that is working very well. And I think our coaches were doing good things, before, but it's also good to have some written things from time to time to help make sure we're understanding what we should do. Also at our schools, not only mentioned that we have excellent trainers, we have 2 per site, we have physician involvement at all of the schools. Our athletic trainers are nationally certified, as well as have to work under the auspices of a medical doctor, and that person helps them ensure that they can get their license and becomes a conduit between the coaches, the parents, the administration, et cetera, to help make sure that we have the cycle of communication, that we're adhering to the right practices, as well as communicating about injuries if they were to occur, and then preventive measures. So we're excited about that. We have some great MDs out there that help our schools. Also, a part of the external framework that helps us are the AI bylaws in regards to participation. And every year you want to participate as an athlete in a program, you have to go through the physical form, and there's a whole vetting and clearance process that's inclusive of a physical every year. Also, you have to do the informed consent video, watch that, which happened to be directed and produced by PSBN. Just thought I'd throw that in there. Also, you have to have proof of insurance, and there's a good systemic way that we do that, and that is as a state, and we have a good practice. We are working on in Peoria Unified to streamline that to an electronic platform, which we're piloting now, which we think will be also beneficial for our parents and our community as we work out the bugs and eventually roll that out. And then we are very committed to professional development of all of our coaches, our administrators, every stakeholder that's involved with the students. We try and send them to as many conferences, workshops, any place that we can have to stay current on the information. And myself and several of our athletic administrators were just in Prescott for our AI AAA, which is our Arizona Interscholastic Administrators Association meetings. Very good. So we continue to do that throughout the year, and we all learn a lot. Also, one of the things that we have to make sure that we're doing is keep a vigilant eye on all of our facilities, which we do have from our site personnel as well as our district personnel in terms of inspection, and making sure that our facilities are safe. Our insurance trust also hires out a third party that comes in and inspects and creates a report of the things that we need to fix. So we get those every fall before school starts, which is very helpful, and also your normal municipalities and Maricopa County things. So we feel that we're getting lots of different eyes and lenses looking at what we're doing and also how our facilities are functioning. In terms of equipment and uniforms, it's always a big thing, and we have 4,000 high school students and 5,000. We have to equip them properly in order to do that. We have a great conversation that goes between the district office as well as the schools. We've become very resourceful, I think, in coming up with strategies to do that. Obviously, somebody mentioned 2007, and we had some financial struggles. Hopefully, we're working our way out of that, but I would like to credit all of our schools, all of the ancillary groups that help support us, and we've continued to provide the best of service as well as equipment for our kids along the way, and hopefully that's going to continue to find all the resources, which we will. One of the big things that we do every year, football is one of the larger participation sports at our high schools that have a significant numbers. You're talking over 200 kids probably on 3 different levels of football. And a great standard that is out there that the football community does every year, and that is to make sure that all of our helmets and all of our shoulder pads are certified, they are reconditioned, they're examined, they're x-rayed, they're disinfected, and then if that process goes through, and which it does, they will attain the National Operating Committee on Standards for Athletic Equipment, which is the NOCSE standard, which in the equipment business is the gold standard. Regardless if you're professional, intercollegiate, or high school, that is the gold standard, and when you have that certified, I feel confident that that is a very good piece of equipment for our kids, and we do that every year to verify that our helmets and shoulder pads are in that type of condition. As I mentioned, we have a continued dialogue to make sure helmets and shoulder pads are probably our biggest capital purchases that we have to make every year, and we want to make sure we are working to come up with a fiscal plan that we're addressing those things periodically throughout the course of each season, and then have a plan in the bigger picture. So I always times everything in my head times 7, since we have 7 high schools. That's how my brain is wired now. In summary, I'd say this, and you're not supposed to date yourself, but I'm going to do it anyway. I've been involved with interscholastic and intercollegiate athletics for 27 years, and I can stand here and safely say that we are doing a great job in Peoria Unified to make sure that we are providing the best of equipment and opportunities and maintaining and exceeding standards. We might not be perfect. We always want to continue to learn and grow, and I appreciate you giving me this opportunity so that we can get some input from you as well. But we are an open book and a sponge, and we're trying to learn. I have the opportunity, we have a great network of district athletic administrators in Arizona. There's probably 10 or 12 other individuals like myself, and we're involved with AI stuff. So we're always exchanging ideas, discussing how everybody does this, and I think we're doing a great job in comparison, and we want to continue to be that and be the gold standard as well in terms of what we do for our kids. And we have some awesome kids. So I would be glad to stand for any questions that the board may have.
Great, thank you very much for that comprehensive presentation. I'll start to my right. Ms. Pangarelli, questions or comments?
Oh, thank you very much. It was a very informative presentation. I know we try to keep away from injuries. Do you keep track, I'm sure you keep track of minor injuries that occur for each sport, and then how to try to rectify those?
Yes, and President Bullock, members of the board, injuries are an occurrence in sports. I don't think we can ever eliminate those, but I think the things that we always work on is making sure the kids are equipped properly and that they're coached the proper techniques that they need to be doing in their sport to make it as safe as possible. And we do have a system, we have incident reports to certain levels if, what the injury may be. And those are things that we want to continue on with my committee, that we talk about the injuries. And if there's something that it's really pervasive, that we're outside the norm, then we need to address that and look at that. But continue to analyze all the data, and those are my experts, so I'll continue to do that. Thank you.
Mr. Sievertson, would you share with the board which sport has the most injuries generally?
That would be cheer, spirit line.
Believe it.
Towards that end, is any progress being made on, isn't there an issue about whether or not cheer is technically a sport that can be insured by the umbrella insurance, whatever? Explain, please. I'm not doing very
Members
well.
of the board, that is the million-dollar question,
Right.
Mrs. Connect. That circles through the courts, it circles through Title IX, it circles through all sorts of different levels of governance and agencies within our country. And I'm not sure where it is exactly right now. Some things define spirit line. I mean, we watch what those students do. It's amazing. Some define it for Title IX as that's an activity, some as a sport. Right now, it is an AI-sponsored sport, so it is under that umbrella. They compete for state titles. They go to competitions. So in Arizona, I would count that as, yes, it is a sport.
Because
Yes.
of AIA's engagement. Okay.
Yep, and it just depends upon what lens someone's looking at it, and you get different definitions.
Great. Mrs. Doan?
No, I appreciate the layout here, and it was very informative. I'm glad our kids are being taken care of. Thank you.
Go ahead.
I'm glad that you talked about how it's part of our comprehensive program offering. I think that our great athletics programming is one of the reasons we have a 93% graduation rate here, by all means, along with some of the other things we do, but this is definitely one of the strong legs in the stool. If I could wave my magic wand, I would have those practices in those hot months before school, not after, for two reasons. One, the risk of heat-related illness would be lessened, and two, because research shows that if we have aerobic exercise before we start to use our brains actually work better. So in your conversations, maybe that's something that you can propose. I think that would be a really beneficial change to our programming. This is a fabulous presentation. I love the utilization of all the photos. It would be my recommendation that this goes on our athletics page on our website, because it's so informative. It really highlights our commitment to safety and athletics as part of our full offering. Very good.
President Bullock, members of the board, Ms. Connect, thank you very much for your kind words, and we will continue to act on everything that you said. And you mentioned a good point that I didn't probably bring up, and that is There's been libraries built with research that supports that students are engaged in activities do better than the rest of the population in terms of academics, socially, discipline. You name any quantifiable category, they do really well.
And in an era where a lot of kids are sedentary because they're spending hours and hours looking at screens, athletic engagement is good for their physical well-being.
Thank you, I would agree.
I really think sports is a hook to a lot of students that is the difference between not graduating and graduating, I would imagine. Staying in school and dropping out, it is an incredible hook, no matter what sport you play. Two quick questions. One, actually, I will, to my imaginary friend here, Mr. Jonigan next to me. I know he was talking about, he spawned this presentation or this question. With budget, and I'm kind of paraphrasing some of the stuff that him and I talked about, with budget concerns over the past years, and it's not gotten substantially better, obviously that cuts into all aspects of our programs, whether art and sports and academics. How has the current budget problems that we've had over the past couple of years affected the repurchase or the purchase of new equipment that's necessary? I'm happy to see that we're certifying equipment each year to make sure, and an independent third party, and we pay them to do that, and that's great. But obviously, every year, there's X amount of helmets and shoulder pads and knee pads and whatever that we have to toss because they're cracked or whatever, for whatever reason. That's a concern, that are we able to keep up with the demand with our limited budget? And if we can keep up, and if we're able to keep up, which it sounds like we are, how are we keeping up as we've been cut, but we have more and more kids participating?
President Bullock, members of the board, that's a great question, and I'll credit that a lot to the leadership of this building as well as the schools and all of the other stakeholders. We've always found a way to make sure that we prioritize the needs and have addressed them. Yes, we could always use more resources from somewhere, but we have never neglected any of the things that are needed. And maybe we've asked the Booster Club to help us buy some balls or some other things like that, but the major capital expenses, helmets, shoulder pads, occasionally the Booster Clubs volunteer to want to buy jerseys or uniforms for students, and we're like, that's great, that's something we really need, and we could help you. So I think it's an ongoing conversation and engagement that we have to have with all of the principal stakeholders, and then continue to make sure we have priorities and we have focus, and somebody's keeping an eye on all of the big picture, that we're addressing those priorities and doing the right things. And I credit, that's a whole team of people that's been doing that. But we will continue to do that. We appreciate more resources, but we've always funded. Maybe we can have the big run-out helmet thing, or some of those outside things, but we're going to focus on making sure we do that. And if there's extra resources, I think the communication we have with the athletic administrators and principals at the school is, okay, this is what we're going to be able to fund for athletics, and then we always have other things in line if needed, contingencies. And if you need helmets and shoulder pads, we find a way to make sure that we take care of that.
Cool. And last question, maybe it's more of a rhetorical question. What's a concern that you have with our athletic program that the board can possibly help with? Again, it's the presentation was great, highlights a lot of wonderful things, but there's always, every business, and athletics is a business, has problems or things they're working on or struggles. They say, hey, that's why I asked the question about equipment. And you're like, yeah, sometimes we have to go to the Booster Club. Sometimes we have to go and maybe even raise fees, which has happened in the past. Whatever it is, just to make sure everyone is safe. What concern do you have for our athletic program that maybe the board can help advance or just be aware of, no matter how small or large?
President Bullock, members of the board, I would say internally, we're doing a lot of great things. We're creative, we're collaborative, we're figuring out how to take care of it, finding resources. That always helps. If the board can magically do that, I think Mrs. Connect talked about the magical wand, and we'd always take more resources. But I'm very confident and I'm very proud of all of the people and the hard work that they do to provide this experience, from our coaches to our site people. I think our bigger threats, this probably doesn't answer your question, but it's what I'm thinking, are some of the external things and threats to interscholastic activities and clubs and not supporting. And we want to make sure that we rally as our educational communities to say, no, this is really important. We want to stay aligned to schools. We want to stay aligned to scholastic activities, and high school sports are good for the enrichment of our kids and so on. But we're going to continue to evaluate everything we do internally and do the right things.
Yeah, interesting you bring up the fact that as the professional world of sports changes, so dramatically, can't help but filter down to the local. And you're right, we now find ourselves in competition with club sports and everything else, so that puts more on your plate. So again, as the board can become informed, we can make smarter decisions to help, even if it's just 1%. So please continue to let us know specifically what we can do to help you.
President Bullock, members of the board, I appreciate that, and I will continue to come back with offerings and suggestions of ways that you can help.
Good, thank you so much for being here. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Okay, our next item on the agenda is number 10. We'll turn it over to Dr. Stifler for a report on discussion on local, state, and federal legislative issues.
President Bullock, members of the board, I have three things to report. We'll start with the public comment, as you heard at the beginning, continues on the math and ELA standards, that important effort, and that we're so well represented on. It also continues on ESSA, as the state figures out how we're going to implement that federal program. Significantly, well, honestly, I hope it's not significantly. I hope it's routinely. The Joint Legislative Audit Committee, that's not a committee we usually talk about, right? But the committee of both House and Senate members in the Arizona legislature, part of their purview is to review some of the, a sample of the random audit or seemingly random audits that happen through the state over the year. And we're a winner. Ding, ding, ding. So I received an invitation to an opportunity that can't refuse, where we get to say, here's what our audit is. We get to stand for questions. And we also, it's programmed in that we have a chance to brag. So that's coming up in November. It hasn't been scheduled for the exact date. And then the third thing I would lift up is, Ms. Connect already mentioned, Governor Ducey has launched an Achieve 60 Arizona campaign. And the idea behind that is that by the year 2030, that 60% of Arizonans would have a degree or certification of some kind. Basically what we say, right? College or career ready. On that, I'm very heartened to see an emphasis on early literacy. And so groups are convening and pushing towards all-day K. Peoria, not surprisingly, is a leader. I'm proud that our district has found a way to offer that critical program. Arizona had that at one time and pulled back. I'm just going to report informally, as I rode down in the elevator with 4 conservative legislators, I heard one say, that makes sense to us. We ought to get that done. What's in the way of that? And I heard another conservative legislator say, I don't think there's anything in our way to get that done. That's not the same thing as a silver ticket or a budget item, but I was heartened to hear leadership in the state listening and understanding the critical importance of early literacy. It also means dollars, right? So to our district, if they use the old formula from when we had all-day K, that's about $3.2 million a year. Across the state, that's $185 million a year or so if they use the old formula. There's no telling what's going to happen. As Mrs. Connect said, the governor didn't say, I put my political reputation behind, let's make sure this happens. He said, let's make sure that kids know enough in kindergarten. He appeared at an all-day kindergarten event, but he was very careful about saying, I think we should fund all-day kindergarten. So I was especially heartened on my elevator ride down. Here endeth my report.
Thank you very much. And the music, I trust, was nice as well in the elevator?
I only was listening to those conservative legislators, quite frankly.
That was your music. All right, good. Thank you. Our next item, Ms. Connect, I'm sorry.
Well, I just want to follow up with that, and I actually wrote 2 things down, but one is so cryptic, even I can't remember what I meant. But I just wanted to say that this is a great moment to say thank you to our community for passing the override, because without the override, we would not be offering all-day K to all of our kids. So yay for the voters in Peoria who allow us to do that critical service for our community. And there was something else, but I can't remember what it was.
Well, you decode that and let us know.
I will.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Number 12, consideration of approval of the consent agenda. I need to pull one because it's amazing. Did I? You know what, I got, every third meeting I get click happy. I really apologize. Hold on. All right, sorry, number 11, request for agenda items for future governing board meetings. Start with my right. Ms. Pangarelli, Ms. Doan.
I do have something. When I was at the ASBA convention earlier this month, they brought up some things about alternatives to suspensions and how suspensions are really not working. It puts the child out of the learning environment and leaves them at home with what God knows what they're doing. And that a lot of children who are suspended, they're like 70% more likely to wind up in the juvenile system. I would like to investigate alternative behavior, like behavior,
Discipline.
yeah, issue, how to handle that. I know there are alternatives out there.
We could request an agenda item for, I would call that, one way that's often called is restorative justice, and so we could
That's
do-
the phrase I was looking
Or
for.
restorative discipline, and so we could, if you give us a little bit of time, we could do some homework to prepare for an agenda item for that.
I'm very interested in that topic as well. I second the request. Oh, and I remembered my other thing.
Okay, Ms. Doan, are you just requiring anything else?
That was what I wanted to do.
Okay.
So.
I was just going to say, back on All Day K, that the Arizona School Boards Association just had their delegate assembly where representatives from school boards across the state voted on a political agenda for the next year, and full funding of All Day K is on that political agenda.
Good. Cool, thank you. All right, we're good. Now, we move on to the next one. Consideration of approval of the consent agenda. I would like to pull 15C donations report, and I think you'll be glad that I did. I hope you'll feel the same as I do, but other than that, I can, any other items to pull?
No, sir.
All right, then I will move that we accept or approve the items on the consent agenda except for 15C.
Second?
Second, thank you. This is an action item, so as soon as Mrs. McCarty rewrites that and pulls that out, we'll go ahead and vote on it. Let me try out, yeah, we're on the current item. There's another way to accomplish it so we can move forward. Yeah, we can do a verbal.
We can do a verbal, sir.
Yep, let's do that. Okay, so all in favor of accepting the consent agenda as stated without 15C donation report? Aye?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that passes good. What does that become, or do we want to just make up a number? Or leave it as 15C?
Just leave it as 15C, sir.
Okay, great. All right, so if we can pull the, would you mind pulling the donations report up so we can see that real quick? Or we'll still call this 15C, the PDF file. There we go. Thank you, my digital brothers. Two to look at from Arizona Cardinals Walmart Neighborhood Heroes for football field renovation, $96,422.75. Incredible to revamp our football fields, which are also used by soccer and other sporting events as well. And also, if you'll go down towards the bottom of the page, it's not even up yet. Well,
Yes, we did.
well,
Donations report.
no, it's not. It'll jump me right to the next one. We can't, so you just pull it up and then we'll vote through this as we already did. There we go. Sorry, I apologize. So, second one down, $96,422.75 from Arizona Cardinals Walmart Neighborhood Heroes for Centennial High School. Thank you, thank you, thank you 96,000 times. That is incredible. And if you go down towards the bottom, you'll see from Lenovo, actually, for Raymond S. Kellis High School, almost $12,000 in new, basically tablet ThinkPads, convertible computers, laptops. So incredible. So thank you very much to Lenovo and their network, their Scholar Network. So we just combine those two things, and again, we appreciate every dollar we get because we desperately need it. But just between those two right there, you're looking at, $108,000 of contributions. So that was poll worthy. And I hope you'll agree with that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so let's go on to next item on the agenda.
President
Wait,
Bullock,
yep.
that needs,
Wait.
hopefully the board is willing to accept that donations report.
You're right. So let's do this. I go ahead and I propose or recommend that we accept 15C as stated. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. See, you didn't know as a new superintendent, you'd have to keep me in line once in a while. That was an additional job description. Thank you.
Didn't feel like that at all, sir.
All right, 15C, all in favor of accepting the donations report as stated? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There we go. Awesome, you bet. All right, oh, now it does show up as 18C. Now it works. You want to vote on it? Will that make it easier? We haven't clicked for a while. Let's everybody go ahead and click. Yep, perfect. All right. Go ahead and vote. And we can move it forward. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda. Okay, here we go. Here's our reports. We're going to go through these a little quickly. They are all available on our website in our board packet. I encourage you to look at them, especially the budget facility report, because it always shows what kind of improvements we're doing to a school near you, some with bond money, some with capital money. But it's always good to see what we're doing, safety, security, technology, resources, new roof, air condition, that type of stuff.
Yeah.
So good. All right, that's great, thank you. Next item on the agenda is number 20, District Enrollment Report for August 2016. We are net up, I believe was stated, a couple hundred kids, so you can look at your school and see how that was affected by our net increase so far. So good to see. Thank you very much. Next item, report on upcoming meetings and events. We'll want to go ahead and pull this PDF file. There's always good things coming up in our district.
Patron tour.
Patron tour, thank you. Great. All right, that is on October 21st, 8:30 a.m., Centennial and Oasis. And you get a ride in a yellow school bus. When's the last time y'all rode in a yellow school bus? It's been a year or two, right? Or some, with a zero after it. All right, and good, perfect, thank you very much. Draft agenda, next item 22 for the October 13th, 2016 regular board meeting, which is our next event here. And we are going to have more financial reports, and approval of the budget and compensation process has been moved for 2 additional weeks after that.
President Bullock, could we scroll back up a little bit?
Yeah.
Item 10. I believe in a discussion earlier with you and the board clerk, we discussed moving that further into the future off that agenda item. And as we had that conversation, as you all had that conversation earlier today, that would give us a little more time to be prepared for that.
Yeah, you and I said the same thing at the same time, sorry.
I'm sorry.
We were talking over each other. But no, agreed, 100%. Dr. Stifler and I are in 100% agreement that we are moving that 2 weeks after the meeting after that. Thank you very much. All right, and board member opportunity to readdress additional items on the, or items on the agenda. It's our go back in time moment. Anything readdress? No readdressing. We will stay that way. All right, on to consideration of adjournment. This needs a motion and a second to go home. Who would like to motion?
I move.
Who would like to second the movement?
I'll second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Let's see if it passes. Yep, 4 and with 1 absent. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great night.
Okay. 2 things, 3 things. One, I don't think you